So, my husband just all of a sudden starts asking me about my finances, and I think it's really weird. I mean, I usually share with him these details, but the questions he's been asking are just a giant red flag. Well, that's because he's been fired from his job for embezzlement, and now he's in massive debt, and he has no source of income, and he didn't even bother to tell me. But this story gets way worse. He's also cheating. I found all this out through my sister-in-law. Let me explain.
Oh, I can't wait to get married. All my friends are either married or engaged, and I just need to meet the right guy, and boom, we're off to the altar. You see, that was my biggest dream at 25, when I was scared of catching a late bus, and oh yes, I met the right guy, so-called, and boom, we got into a sweet relationship for about 2 years and finally landed at the altar, where he promised me heaven and earth. As expected, I do, was my reply when I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I seemed obsessed with the marriage because the occasion was just so inviting and glamorous, but little did I know that the true marriage starts after the wedding ceremony. And then it would be difficult to revert to the I do that I did. Well, the divorce rate is soaring nowadays if you don't know. But I didn't get married to divorce, and that's why I've been trying all I can to make the marriage work. I used to think that those who divorced their spouses didn't know what they wanted from the beginning, and were just caught between their desire to flee or the confusion of just remaining with their partners. But now I understand them better. Experience has taught me that it's all a scam. I mean, everything, marriage, the wedding vows, the desire to stick to a partner, and what have you, the wedding vows are just formulated poems to impress your other half and probably the audience. The desire to have a partner is often driven by selfish ambition, which isn't evident from the start. I could be right if I said many marriages are built on piles of lies, and that's why they easily crumble and crash on the couple, in my opinion. You know, with all the squabbles in homes, it seems very few still enjoy the intimacy and protection that marriage brings. In some exceptional cases, I always wished it to turn out the way, and all marriages do, and that mine shouldn't be an exception. But here I am, struggling with a man I once saw as the perfect match for me. He was all I thought I needed, but now he seems to be more than I can handle. Hank and I had the wedding of our dreams, with both of our families consenting wholly to the union. My mother liked him. She also thought that he was perfect for me because of his kind heart and humble spirit, which turned out to be a façade, or should I say a change of perception with age. But he's just 37. You know, we marked our 6th anniversary 3 months ago, and oh, that. I was the only one who marked it. It was the day he remembered that he had to deliver some drugs to one of their partnering companies. He forgot, and it made me so mad. He didn't come home until the next day, giving excuses that his car had faultiness along the lone road that linked up to the neighboring town he drove to. So he had to seek shelter in a small inn to pass the night and then get an engineer to fix his car in the next day. Hank has changed from who he used to be, and when I met him 8 years ago. At first I thought I did not observe him enough, but I later realized that wasn't the issue. Date a man for 5 years or more before marriage and he could still turn out to be someone you never knew. That's just it. I still give myself credit for dating him for 2 years at least. See, Bernice dated her ex-husband for barely 2 months before they secretly tied the knot. That was a year after I married Hank. By the way, Bernice is my sister-in-law. She's Hank's only sister. And I used to envy Hank for having a sibling because I'd always longed for one since I was the only child of my parents. But that was then, not anymore. If having one means a bearing up like I do with Bernice, then I'm thankful that I have none. Bernice is an awful liability I have to deal with for some years now. She just cleaves to me as if I were her mommy. But no way would that make me the grandma of her 2 kids, Emma and Damien. Besides, being the mom of a 34-year-old woman is just scary. But wait, isn't that what I'm doing? She's not so different from my 2 boys. She practically competes with them to eat all the chocolate cookies and snacks I stock up in the fridge. And she wouldn't even spare much for her kids. I mean, it's not funny. But I've gotten used to her over the years. Bernice has been a burden ever since she got married and found out she married a liar and a manipulative predator who was only interested in the little that she had to offer and nothing else. She got pregnant with Emma when she saw his true color, and she divorced him some months after she gave birth. Surprisingly, he still fathered her second child, and I don't know what she was thinking. To get back with him and only to separate again after Damien was conceived? That is, by the way, but there's no way that I can speak of my troubles in marriage without mentioning Bernice. She just adds more fuel to the fire, and I'm practically responsible for the upkeep of her and her kids since she lost her job some years ago. And she finds it difficult to secure another, but prefers to leech off me as if I don't have enough on my plate already. Hank works for a big pharmaceutical company, and his pay is way more than what I get from the insurance company I work for, not to mention the bonuses he gets from marketing drugs. Yet he left me with the responsibility of catering for the kids' needs, as well as the household expenses, not to mention his kid's sister and her children, who should be his responsibility. Whenever I complain about her taking too much, he tells me not to be stingy and lectures me on how to share and love. I wish he could comply with that rule, but why his hands are clenched when he talked about finance is what baffles me. What he does with his money and how he spends it is still such a mystery. I'm so tired of arguing with him because he lashes at me about paying for the rent, whereas I've paid for the rent of a couple of times too. I even reported him to Bernice, but all she had to say was that he must have a good reason to do what he was doing, and that I should try to understand him. I mean, can you imagine? With all these expenses on my table, I hardly have enough to spare for myself. My boys, Andy and Tommy, are 5 and 3, and they have so many needs, but my husband doesn't seem to care much about how they fare. I often feel depressed and oppressed at the same time because nobody seems to make sense of my grievances. Hank's parents passed away a few years after we got married, and with a short interval between his dad and mom's death. Maybe if they were here, they might just be able to speak some sense into their son. My mom does not want to interfere again after her advice has been turned down on several occasions, so I'm just left on my own to face this awful situation. I need some advice right now. I wish I could dare to cut Bernice off and tell her face to go look for a job. She seems to be comfortable leeching off me all these years as if I were a money-yielding tree. As for Hank, I don't know what to do about him, but I'm sure that I can't continue like this unless I want them to suck me dry. Updates. Number 1. Hey guys, well, just so you know, I'm here again. It's been 3 months and things aren't getting any better. Thanks a bunch for encouraging comments though. After my last update, I continued to struggle with trust issues with Hank. He's so full of lies these days that I don't even know what to believe anymore. I look forward to being wiser and more courageous in making certain decisions, especially now that things seem to have taken a worse turn. Talking about a worse turn, Hank recently requested to handle my finances, claiming that I spent too much on household expenses and the kids' wear. I wondered what was gotten into him all of a sudden. After all, it'd always been me who took care of these things. I first declined and told him to mind his business, as he'd always done since it wasn't the money I'd been spending. He didn't care about the children's needs, let alone my own. So why the sudden interest in my finances? I never would have thought that the theory of evolution is still as effective in human character as it is under another organism. How Hank evolved into the hard, opaque person that he is now is still a mystery that's difficult to unravel. I tried to make him understand that I wasn't spending recklessly, but only on the needful, yet he insisted we needed to save more for future plans. He told me he got a new project deal on investments and real estate, and according to his estimation, we would have a triple profit if we played our cards right. He explained that he had also put an enormous sum into his business, and that was why he could not meet all of his home expenses. Why am I only hearing about this now? I've brought up my concerns about him not meeting expectations as a husband and father before, but he never mentioned these excuses. Why is he bringing it up now? I expressed my doubts, but he's still insisting it's part of a surprise plan. He said he didn't want to carry me along at first so that it would all be more exciting when it finally yielded, but he now had to involve me because there was a need for more investment to ensure a better turnout. And that was all. I was captured by his sweet talk. Hank always had his way with words, and when he means to convince me about something, I don't know what came over me that made me fall for everything he talked about. I later reasoned that the investment has been on for years because he had already adopted that irresponsible attitude for 4 years now, ever since Andy was a year and some months old. I clearly remember myself buying virtually everything he needed. Clothing, toys, you name it. But then I'd already given him access to my account, which was difficult to revert. I only specified the amount I would likely need each month for home upkeep after cutting down on several items. I still kind of feel uneasy about this, though. I can't see through Hank because he seems to try so hard to keep things to himself. I'm not sure what those things are, but I'm sure that he's hiding things from me, and I intend to go to the root of all of it. I just hope whatever his antics are won't crash on me in the end. Oh yeah, and I also forgot. Can I? If I don't talk about Bernice, my experiences cannot be complete. She's become a glue to my marriage, right? But unfortunately a choking bone, too. Guess what she did recently, see? I came back from work and saw my room scattered. My kids are on summer break, so they've been at my home with their caretaker, who had just had a few hours to watch over them till I arrived. And of course, Bernice's kids were there too. My home was practically theirs ever since they could react to the beat of a sound. I don't have much issues with them anyways. They're kids. But the fact that they're spoiled brats often sends some irritating vibes down my veins. Back to the disorganized room, though. It was disgusting of a sight, as my shoes were littered all over the floor and my wardrobe was open, with my dining gowns and clothing lurking around corners while some were on display on the bed. I demanded to know what's going on here and was told it was Bernice who came to display her antics. I almost exploded but had to calm my nerves because of the children and their nanny, who was around. It was very disheartening that my family was becoming an epic drama that it's not even entertaining anyone. Later on, Bernice gave me some flimsy excuse for her being in a hurry to get together party organized by her older friends, and that's why she had to rummage my things in search of something suitable to wear. There wasn't enough time to put my things back into place because she was getting late. I was annoyed. Very annoyed, but guys, what in the heck could I do? That wasn't the first time that she had taken my nice clothing, but she's becoming more of a nuisance. I think I'm almost exhausted with the whole drama. I would prefer to sit in a theater watching a horror film, than behold the madness that's constantly on display in my family. I don't really know what to do. I'm already at edge trying to find a way of stability. I hope it happens soon. Update number 2. Hello, it's me again. So, it's been 6 weeks since my last update, and this week has been an emotional, draining, and cranky one for me. As much as I appreciate your comments and advice, I wish I had spoken up earlier before I decided to give my husband access to my account. It could have saved me a lot of headache if I had followed your opinions. And yes, Henrietta's anticipation is fulfilled, but in a most unexpected and tragic way I could not even have imagined. It could have been better if he had gotten the camp bus and disappeared with his sister forever. Hank was jobless. That was the reason he suddenly got interested in my finances. He was fired from work for embezzlement, and he never told me. What he did with all the money he earned and embezzled is the most outrageous part of the story. See, he gambled with his money and mine, and to top it all off, he treated ladies to elegant and refreshing lifestyles while I struggled to keep the home running. You must be eager to know how I found out, right? Well, let me give you a few more annoying details. Right, I was out in the evening after work to get some groceries for the house, but I did not use the grocery store that was close to my home. I wanted to try out a new place suggested by a friend at work, so I went. On my way home, I saw my husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip for the past 2 days. I felt my eyes were deceiving me as I widened them to see more clearly. Behind me, I saw about 2 ladies and another man chatting and giggling it up with my husband. It was confusing and intriguing at the same time, but I couldn't wait to get a clear picture of what was happening. I trailed them in a taxi when I noticed that they were heading towards God knows where. But I was almost certain it wasn't somewhere too far because they were in a casual outfit as if they were going to have some fun. I followed them to their destination, and guess what? It was a clubhouse. I was almost denied entrance since I wasn't a member, but I quickly faked a smile, telling the guard that my husband just walked in, so he thought that we came together and let me in. To cut to the chase, I found my husband gambling inside the club. I was spellbound and stood there like a new statue with a firm grip on the pole close to the doorway. You know, Hank was also busy caressing a lady who had moved so close to him, leaning on him and holding his hands in her hands. I felt a splitting headache in a second and struggled to keep my feet aground. After a few minutes, he managed to look behind, or probably someone gave him a tip, and there he saw me, and he left very, very flustered. I zoomed off and found my way home, just to see if I could unravel the puzzle I just encountered, and cleared my mind. He didn't bother to come home right away, and that gave me ample time to dig deeper for the hidden truths, even though I was also scared of finding out more. I managed to reach out to one of his colleagues, who was also an old friend. She told me all that's happened at work and also gave me the information that wasn't work-related, that she had gathered from a close resource. She didn't want to ruin my marriage, and that was why she kept silent until I called her. It was a bombshell for me. Hank has been dismissed from work based on embezzlement for over 5 months, and you know the rest. To think that his sister has been a party to all his lies and cheating was like throwing gasoline on the flame. I learned about this when Hank came back home 3 days later and could not come near me. I was in the kitchen when Bernice rushed in. She must have thought that I went to work and blurted out, "Does she know everything? How could you be so careless?" I was dumbfounded as I dragged my feet towards the living room, staring at her like someone who had just lost her senses. She quivered when she saw me and acted very, very awkward. I'm currently lost in a maze of thoughts, and I wish that it was all a nightmare. I'm boiling in rage, and I need help. Should I let all hell loose, or should I just, send them there? Update number 3. Hey guys, this is it. This is my final update, but be prepared. Okay, let's get into it. It's 6 months later. Let's dive into the latest gist. A lot of things have happened since the last update. I went through moments of rage and pain, was even caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I was bent on taking it all out on them, and I did so to the point that I almost lost my humanity. After Hank came back home from the club, I felt there was nothing to resolve. It was time of action for me. I cut off his access to my bank account so that he would not have to spend my money playing with the big guys in town and ladies that he frequented at the club. I made sure to engrave it in his mind that he was a loser, a failure, a jobless, incompetent idiot. I even stopped the nanny from coming for the housekeeping. I made Hank do everything, all the chores, threatening him with some illegal invoices I found in the stuff some months ago. That alone was enough to jail him. So he had no choice but to do my bidding. Even though he felt sorry and regretful, I believed it wasn't a sign of repentance, but rather guilt that emanated from being caught. If I hadn't caught him, he would still have been playing me for a fool, so I wasn't interested in his apologies. I just wanted to let him have a bite of the crap that he fed me. Well, if I hadn't caught him, he would still be playing me as a fool, so. As for my sister, I played along hypocritically. I made her feel at ease, as if I were over her betrayal, and she felt free to relate to me as before. So I gave her a dose of the medicine when she dared to ask me to lend her some money for a business. I promised I would, and convinced her to take a loan from some notorious loan shark that I would pay back after I received my pay, since she seemed to need it so urgently. The silly lady believed, and did so only to find out it was her doom. The refund exceeded the stipulated time, and it was trouble for her as she was arrested for failure to pay, and unfortunately the business she invested in failed, obviously woefully. So her debt continued to pile up with interest. After all these things, I still could not seem to get over what Hank did to me. The more I saw him, the more I was enraged, until one day I decided to hand over these invoices to his former company. Those proved to be more fatal than the consequential effects of being laid off from work. He was sent to jail. At this point, I felt guilty for being the cause of jailing the father of my kids. They have been aware that something was up because it was evident in the atmosphere of my home that they've always known, but to what extent was beyond their grasp. After 2 weeks, he was released as he undertook, selling some of his possessions like his car and some of his private property that he bought that I wasn't even aware of. He came back and found divorce papers waiting on the center bar table in the living room. I'd filed divorce while he was away. He shed tears and pleaded for forgiveness, but I didn't budge. Even though I was moved, I told him things could never be the same when he pleaded for a second chance. I couldn't go on living with a mystery man who kept me in the dark about virtually everything important in his life, and even the unimportant. I told him to find somewhere else to stay, as I would be giving him a few days to sort it all out. It was a rented house anyways, and the only property we could have owned was kept a secret and sold off in the end just to pay off his debt. That made me more agitated. However, there was a very unexpected turn of events when I discovered an appalling fact that left me sitting on the fence. You see, my mom called, telling me she found out that her anonymous kidney donor some years ago was Hank. She had been diagnosed with kidney dysfunction before I got married and was on dialysis. We searched for several months for a compatible donor until we miraculously found one who was anonymous. I wouldn't know why Hanky would keep it a secret, despite knowing well who it was that he donated to. My mother has been on the lookout for her donor for gratitude's sake, and she has to find out that this time it's him. Was that supposed to be a sign? I asked myself. I'd always been grateful to whoever it was, but I didn't know that he was someone so close and yet so far away. It's true that no matter how bad someone is, there must be something good to hold on to. This saying proved right with Hank, and to be honest with you guys, it completely melted my heart. My mom also, she did forgiveness, and I realized that I would have more peace to forgive than to hold on to grievances. After swimming in a sea of uncertainty, I finally decided to let go, so the divorce was nullified. I've given him, but will not forget the trouble that he put me through so that I could appropriate my lesson. I paid off part of Bernice's debt and had her undertake work to pay for the rest of the installments. But I set my boundaries and will not let her leech off me anymore. Guys, thank you for all the support in these tough phases of my life. I've learned that forgiveness truly breeds peace. I've also been fortified by my experiences so that I will never, ever let myself be vulnerable or victimized again.
Here's the comment that I want to discuss. It says, must confess, you were too cruel to your sister-in-law and your husband. You should have learned to let go earlier. Even though you later changed your mind, it's still on record that you jailed the father of your kids and their aunt. No matter your excuses, it was a wicked thing to do. Now that you've discovered he once saved your mom, the guilt of your actions should haunt you for the rest of your life. Here's comment 2. It says, I'm happy for you, lady. It's right that you considered your kids and your sister's kids as well. I've also learned a lot from your experience. It's a good thing that you have your family back. Good news comes at the worst time sometimes, when we least expect it, and it's also good that you realized the good in your husband and patched it up with him. And I just hope that your greedy sister-in-law has learned her lesson. But I'll advise you to never let your husband and his sister take advantage of you again. Guys, which one of those comments are you rocking with the most? Drop it down below. My name's Mr. Reddito, and if anyone's new to the channel, I want to welcome you, and just so you know, I drop a video every single day, and if you run out of stories to watch, this isn't my only channel. In fact, I have Mr. Reddito Animated, which you've probably seen before, or Mr. Reddito's Revenge Stories. That one you might not have seen. It's newer, but it's all about revenge stories, and some of those stories are absolutely insane. So if you ever run out of videos, go check out those other 2 channels. You can just type them up in the YouTube search bar and it'll pop right up. Guys, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. And just, of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.